What happens when a powerful CEO takes a quiet seat at his own restaurant, only to overhear a conversation that makes him question everything he thought he knew? It was a chilly Wednesday afternoon when Michael Luciano stepped through the front doors of Luciano's bistro, tucking his scarf into the collar of a worn leather jacket. He looked like any other customer, tired, unshaven, maybe in need of a good meal and a quiet booth. That was the point. Michael had founded the bistro chain over a decade ago, born from nothing but a handwritten family recipe and a fire in his gut. Now it was a multi-million-dollar brand with franchises in 3 states and investors expecting polished numbers more than passionate food. But something had been gnawing at him lately. The soul of the place, the original heart behind the menu felt like it was disappearing, and no amount of analytics or sales graphs could show him why. So he came here, alone, under the radar, no executive notice, no corporate crew. Just a seat at the original flagship restaurant, his first love, disguised in a coat he hadn't worn in years. He took a booth by the window, ordered a coffee and the special, kept his head down, eyes drifting around the room. It still had that warm glow, the soft wood finish, the hum of conversation beneath jazz instrumentals. But then he heard them, 2 boys, teenagers, maybe 13 or 14, sitting in the booth just behind him, their voices low but sharp. "He's the reason Mum never cooks anymore. Yeah, she doesn't even say his name. She used to love working in a kitchen, now she won't even walk into one. She said he stole everything." Michael's hand froze around his coffee mug. The words sliced through him like a memory he'd tried to forget. He took her recipes, her credit, her future. He blinked. Could they be talking about someone else? He strained to listen, careful not to react. "If I ever saw that guy, I'd tell him what he did. I don't care if he owns the whole world." Michael's heart thudded hard against his chest. He turned his head ever so slightly, catching a glimpse of the boys in the reflection of the framed photo on the wall. One of them had their mother's eyes. He knew those eyes. Angela Carter. She'd been his sous chef nearly 10 years ago. Fiery, talented, full of soul. She'd created half the sauces on the original menu. He hadn't seen her since the day she stormed out after a heated fight over credit, menu control, and, if he was being honest, his ego. He told himself at the time it was just business. Now, sitting here, listening to 2 young boys carry the weight of their mother's pain, it felt like something far worse. The server came back with his plate. Michael didn't touch it. His mind was somewhere else entirely, locked in a kitchen 10 years ago, with the sound of slamming doors and a woman shouting, "You built your name on my hands, and then cut me out." He had to find her, but first, he had to face what he'd done. It's one thing to overhear the truth. It's another to walk toward it and let it break you wide open. That night, Michael Luciano sat in his office at the top floor of the company's headquarters, the skyline flickering outside the window. His untouched dinner sat cold beside him. He wasn't looking at numbers. He wasn't reading reports. He was staring at a name typed into a search bar, Angela Carter. At first, there was nothing recent, an old food blog from 2015 mentioning her as a rising sous chef. A grainy photo of her plating a risotto at the opening of his original bistro. Then, silence. No LinkedIn updates, no recent press. Just a fading digital trail that stopped abruptly. Right after she left his kitchen. He leaned back in his chair, heart sinking. He hadn't just lost her as a chef. She had vanished. By morning, he'd made up his mind. He wasn't going to send an assistant. He wasn't going to write an email. He was going to find her himself. He called in a personal favor from Marco, one of the original line cooks from the early days, now managing a location upstate. "Marco, you remember Angela Carter?" Marco didn't hesitate. "You mean the one you pushed out?" Michael's stomach turned. "I didn't mean to. I know, but she doesn't." Pause. "She's in town. Works part-time at a community center now." teaches a cooking class for kids. Michael was silent. I'll text you the address, Marco added. But if you're going, go with your hands open. Later that afternoon, Michael found himself standing outside a modest brick building on the south end of town. Kids' laughter spilled from a side window. The smell of something roasted and familiar floated through the air. He stepped inside, unsure of what to expect. The kitchen was small, humble, a far cry from the pristine chrome of his restaurants. But in the center, guiding a group of kids, no, older than 10 through a soup recipe, was Angela. She hadn't changed much. Still graceful in the kitchen, still sharp. But there was something heavier in her eyes now, something tired, wounded, focused on giving everything to these kids, as if giving kept the pain from taking root. Michael stayed at the door until the class wrapped up. Angela finally noticed him when the last child hugged her goodbye. Her face shifted in an instant, from calm to disbelief to guarded steel. "What are you doing here?" she said, drying her hands. Michael stepped forward, slowly. "I heard something yesterday, in my own restaurant, something I should have heard a long time ago." Angela crossed her arms. "Took you 10 years to listen?" He didn't answer. "I didn't come here to defend myself," he said. "I came to ask, what happened? From your side." Angela laughed bitterly. "My side? You want my version, now after building a brand off my spice rub and putting your name on my pasta?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." She shook her head. "You took my work. When I asked for credit, you told me, it's not about ego. But it was. Yours." He swallowed hard. "I left your kitchen in tears. You didn't even call." He didn't have an excuse. "I was wrong," he said. "I thought success meant moving forward at all costs. But the cost was you." Angela's voice cracked. "Do you know how many times I tried to start over? How many doors were closed because I wasn't a fit after leaving you?" He nodded. "That's why I'm here." "I don't need your guilt," she said, brushing past him toward the sink. "I'm not offering guilt," Michael replied. "I'm offering a seat at the table." She froze. "What do you mean?" "I want you to come back. Not as an employee, as a co-head chef, with full credit, with your name on the wall next to mine, not for PR, for truth." Angela looked at him long and hard, and then quietly said, "I'll think about it." That night, Michael sat in his car outside the community center. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man trying to repair something he didn't even realize he'd broken. And that somehow felt more important than profit margins or expansion plans. It felt honest. Healing takes time. But sometimes it begins with a single step, a moment when someone chooses to return, even when the past still stings. A week passed. Not a word. Michael Luciano kept checking his phone. Emails, texts, even calls from unknown numbers. Every time it buzzed, he hoped it would be her. But Angela Carter didn't reply, not even a message to say no. She had said she'd think about it. But now silence filled the space between that conversation and what came next. Michael didn't push. He knew better now. He'd spent the last 7 days doing more than waiting. He called his legal team and had new contracts drafted, ones that included shared creative credit, percentage royalties, and the official reinstatement of Angela's role in the original menu development. He didn't want to offer her a handout. He wanted to make something right, truly right. He even walked back into the kitchen of his flagship location, not as a boss, but as a cook. For the first time in years, he took orders, he chopped onions, he prepped sauces. His team looked at him like he was lost at first. Then something shifted. They saw the humility in him, the quiet apology, the way he took the last shift without complaint. And on the 7th night, just as the restaurant was closing, he got a message. From her. "Tomorrow. Noon. Let's talk." Michael arrived early. He didn't wear a suit. He wore his oldest chef coat, one with Angela's handwriting still faintly visible on the inside collar, where she'd once labelled it with his initials. She walked in 15 minutes late, but when she entered, the room stilled. Angela didn't walk like someone uncertain. She walked like someone who had already decided what her worth was and didn't need permission anymore. Michael stood. Angela looked around the dining room. "You kept the lights low, just like we used to for lunch service." Michael smiled gently. "Some things should never change." She nodded, then sat. For a long time, they didn't speak. Finally, Michael placed the envelope on the table between them. Inside, a copy of the contract. Her name, right beside his. Equal billing. Angela stared at it. "Is this real?" "More than real," he said. "It's overdue." Angela tapped the table slowly. "You know, I dreamed about this, about you apologizing, about you giving me a second chance. And when I woke up, I'd be angry that I let myself believe it." Michael nodded. "You don't owe me anything. Not your forgiveness, not your return. But I want you to know. You were never invisible to me. I just didn't know how to share the light." Angela's eyes welled, but she blinked it away. "What's changed now?" "I did," Michael said softly, "because I finally listened, and I finally saw." She didn't say yes that day, but she came back. Not the next day, not with celebration or press. She just walked into the kitchen on a Thursday afternoon, pulled her hair back into a bun and tied on an apron. The line cooks stopped. Michael watched from the pass. Angela stepped up to the station where the pasta was prepped, the same spot where she'd once perfected the house carbonara. She didn't say a word. She just got to work. It was the smoothest dinner service they'd had in weeks. By the time the rush ended, the team was smiling, laughing. Angela wiped her hands and leaned against the prep table. "You still ruin the cream base by rushing it," she called across the line. Michael grinned. Some habits die hard, but in that moment, something old, something good, returned to the kitchen. A week later, they launched a new limited-time menu, Luciano and Carter, remixed classics. Angela's name was printed on every page. In gold, social media noticed immediately. So did the food bloggers who remembered her name. And more importantly, so did her sons. They came in the following weekend, the same boys Michael had overheard. They didn't recognize him at first, but when they saw their mom walk out of the kitchen in a chef's coat, her coat with her name, they both stood. Angela hugged them tight. Michael approached quietly. "We've met before." The older boy's eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry," Michael said before they could speak. "For all of it. For what I took. For what I ignored." The younger one whispered, "You gave her a second chance?" Michael shook his head. "No. She gave me one." Angela smiled gently. And for the first time in a long time, all of them sat at the same table, together. Some stories don't end in the kitchen. Some are meant to be served to the world, bold, hot, and honest. It started with a blog post. One of the regulars who came in during the Luciano and Carter remixed classics launch shared their experience. On a local food site, it read like a love letter to a place rediscovering its soul. "I don't know who Chef Carter is, but I tasted her name in the sauce, and I saw her pride in the way she smiled coming out of that kitchen." Within hours, it had over 2,000 shares. By the end of the week, the press came calling, not with scandal, but curiosity. Why did the woman who vanished from fine dining reappear next to the man who many thought forced her out? Angela didn't do interviews. She didn't need to. Michael did one, and in it, he said what no CEO ever really says out loud. "I was wrong. I hurt someone who helped build the foundation of this company. And I lost more than a chef. I lost a part of our identity. But thanks to her grace, we're writing a new chapter. Together." That quote went viral. Not because it was flashy, but because it was true. From there, the wave built. Angela and Michael were asked to co-host a televised cooking segment. The segment turned into a special. The special turned into a docu-series. But they kept the restaurant grounded. They kept the team tight. No matter how big the story got, they both knew the truth. The real redemption wasn't on camera. It was in the quiet way Angela corrected the prep chef without scolding him. It was in how Michael now stayed through close every Friday. It was in the kitchen towels folded just the way she used to do them a decade ago. And then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside, my mom used to love to cook, but after her boss took credit for her food, she stopped. Reading about you and Chef Carter gave her hope again. She made her Sunday lasagna last night, said she felt seen. Angela read it 3 times. Then she framed it and hung it in the kitchen, right next to her old apron. That night, the restaurant was buzzing, not with noise, but with meaning. And before the last table left, Angela stood in the middle of the kitchen and quietly raised a glass of sparkling cider to the ones who were pushed out, to the ones still fighting to be heard, and to the ones who are just now finding their way back in. Michael raised his too. No cameras, no press, just family.